Hey, Juan here. Today I wanted to catch up quickly on what validation is, what product validation is. I've been talking about product or validating your products quite often in my videos. I talk about validating different types of assumptions. So I would like to have a very quick video and explain a little bit, at least from my point of view, what I consider to be product validation. So a simple definition for me of what product validation is that validating a product is the act of making sure that your product or that you're building the correct type of product. So that means that your product is going to solve a problem that some people have. And of course, you have to solve it in a correct way. That's a very simple start. But the term validation is then used in very different situations because you can validate different things. You don't only validate your product, you validate your assumptions. This has to be the very important thing for you. You have to validate any assumption that you do. Many times, first of all, you have to validate what is the problem that you're solving for your customers. What are your hypotheses? You have to validate what are the solutions. Even in those early stages of drafting and ideation, you already had to start validating together with some potential customers, ideally, working with them, making sure that the way that you are going to solve it is something that makes sense. You're building an app for exercise. Is that something that people would be interested in? Or would they rather have something else? This is something that you can already start validating with them with very simple mockups or prototypes. Then you have to start validating what are going to be the features. Features, unfortunately, have a very bad rep nowadays, and probably because of how they have been defined in the past. But features are very important. Features are the parts of your product that are going to build value and benefits for your customers. So features are still super important and still very relevant, and you have to validate, again, together with those customers, that those features that you are building are the very important ones for them. Then you can prioritize. If you want to learn more about prioritizing, check out this video. And once you have been validating all these assumptions, you probably start to have some kind of product already, some kind of an MVP, a minimum viable product, something that your customers already can start using and they can start testing. This is a critical moment when you have these early stages of your product, the very early versions, and you have to validate that you are building the correct product. We have seen many products that in the beginning, the launch, it has not been great. Basically, validation maybe has not been there before, or this is one of the stages of validation. But again, it's a good stage of validation if your product initially is not doing very well, but then it starts to do better. You're learning from the problems that your product had, maybe the solutions that it was not building or delivering to the customers, or those values, the benefit that it was supposed to be delivering to the value. Then you are validating with your customer, and you have to have an agile mindset here. You have to think in an iterative way. You are never going to have the perfect product. You are going to always incrementally improve your product, evolve your product, have it moving into a different direction or into a new vision. The less you are able to innovate, most likely the closer you are going to get to an end of a life cycle for your product. And this is why you have to always be validating. You always have to validate what you're building, but you also have to remember the very early stages. You have to remember still what problems you are solving. You are in an iterative process. You are repeating this cycle in a way continuously. You are always finding problems, validating them. You are ideating some kind of solution. You want to validate them. You are then building those features, and you also have to validate them. You will release them to your customers. And again, you will validate with your customers. So you end up with this cycle of planning, validating, ideating, validating, developing, and I've lost my train of thought there clearly. validating, and then you also will deliver and validate. So you end up doing that every cycle that you do, or every stage of the cycle, you do some kind of validation. And of course, there's going to be different ways that you are going to do the validation. It will depend a lot on which stages you are. The validation is going to happen in a way or another. If you are in the various stages of developing a product, the first versions of the product, when you are solving the problem, when you want to validate, you most likely are going to have some kind of discussion with some potential customers. How can you have that early discussion? Well, many times what you can do is that you can start in some kind of social platform or online community and have a poll where you are trying to validate if this problem that you're trying to solve is something that is valid, that is important for users or not. The next one is that out of those people that you have polled, you might want to try to have some interviews with some of them. This can be sometimes just sending a survey to them and getting some answers, or having an in-person survey, which is usually much better because you get the feedback directly from the person. When you send out surveys to an email list, you are going to get very few responses. The next one that you can think about is that when you are validating ideas or validating your potential solutions, what you want to build are some type of prototypes, mockups, designs that you can share with the customer, and they can give you feedback. This can be very simple mockups. They can be low fidelity. They can be high fidelity, meaning that low fidelity, that they're not very detailed. High fidelity is when they start being closer to how they're going to look in the final product. What you want to do with these ones is that you want to test the usability, the design. Do people understand what you're building? Are they going to be lost when they see the design of your product? You also are going to then validate the features. This is going to be sometimes a little bit more difficult, and sometimes I think that the best way to do this is during an interview, of understanding better, going into a deeper dive of, my solution might be about what I was saying earlier, exercise app, but what is inside that exercise app? Yes, probably I already have decided in the initial solution that yes, I want to solve a problem around, for example, calisthenics, doing exercise just with your body weight, no extra weights or things like that. Something that obviously I quite like. But then what you're going to do next is that, okay, what features do you need? What kind of information or what kind of value should I bring you in my app? This would be a very important step. This is what is going to help you then define the feature set. And finally, you can do MVPs. MVPs are going to be in many different flavors and many different shapes. I have a video about them if you want to go and take a deeper dive. But MVPs can be anything from just a mock-up website where you try to get people to sign in into a product that you have not built yet, but you just want to validate the problem. MVPs are different ways of validating, and they can be used in different stages. But most of the people, when talking about MVPs, they are going to talk about that first or initial version of your product. And that's why I just talk about them here. But you could consider that most of the things that I talk about, they are some kind of MVP. And MVPs are vehicles to validate your assumptions. That's what they are. And making sure that you're on track of building the correct product. Again, that's what product validation is. So when building MVPs, you have to take all that information that you have gathered from the previous validations, the feature set, the different design mockups that you have built, the problem and the solution that you are building, and then you start prioritizing. And out of those ones, you will be able, hopefully, to identify what are the must-have features or capabilities in your product. That's going to help you prioritize that MVP. And again, it would be great if you do this together with one of those prospects. Because if you do it together with your prospects, then you are more likely to be building what they need. And yes, it's true, you're not going to work with a ton of prospects at this point, and you are building very tailored for maybe that small group of people, let's say 5 people that you have been talking with. But that's how you had to start. Once you launch to a wider audience, then again you had to validate, because you might have tailored it too much for those 5 people, and then maybe the rest of your audience might want something else. Again, you will validate again once you go to a wider audience. And again, you will repeat the cycle. You will see what problem you are are you really solving the problem that you assume in the beginning, or is it a wider problem, or is it a niche or more narrow problem? This is something that you will find out over time, and again, you will continue the cycle of improving. So product validation is a very key aspect of product development or product management. Anybody that is working, planning, developing products should always have in the back of their mind that they have to validate any assumption, any development they are doing. And this is the way that you are going to increase your chances to build a successful product. These are some ways of doing product validation. If you yourself doing it in a different way, please comment below and let us know. If you want to know more about the whole process of developing a new product, go check out this video. I will see you in the next one, and remember, stay safe.